And now, for the young in heart and weak in the head, it's Round the Archives.
This is a trailer for the young ones.
Hi, I'm Neil, and I'm one of the young ones. We're going to be coming on your screens very soon with lots of bands and laughter and fun. Let me introduce you to some of my wacky pals. This is Vivian, and Mike, and this is Rick. Right. That's it, Neil. I said 10 seconds.
The Young Ones, a new comedy series for the autumn, next Tuesday at 9 o'clock on BBC Two.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Lisa.
Welcome to episode 20.
Of Round the Archives.
20!
20, yeah.
Amazing.
Come of age.
Oh, have you?
Well, we will do next issue. Get the key to the door next time.
Yes. Episode 20
Yes.
Will actually be a bit shorter than usual.
It will. It will. We're giving you a little bit of a rest.
Yes.
This month.
Due to real life getting in the way a bit, this is more of a vanilla issue.
Yeah, boo to real life.
Yes. But I don't think there's anything much left over from episode 19.
No.
Nobody's told us of any major goofs.
No.
Anyway. But for this issue and the next one, in response to Joe Podcast's letter
Yes.
about what we should do, we'll be looking at series that were shown around the time we were born.
Yes. Us and Warren and possibly Nick and Paul as well.
Well, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know yet.
If we can get around to working out what was on when they were
We'll,
born.
we'll see. As I said, this can be an ongoing thing,
Yes.
so we don't need to cram it all into
issues.
this issue. Mm-hmm. In other news, we've been doing the blog continuously, haven't we?
Yes,
which is
amazing.
The roundthearchives.blogspot.co.uk.
Mm-hmm.
You've just been writing about Oh Dr. Beaching today,
Yes.
so that's just gone up.
Mm-hmm.
It's snowing at the moment.
I think it's actually stopped snowing. But
I've done a very quick video on
Yes.
our YouTube channel about the history of snow in Doctor Who,
Yes.
which lasts all of about 38 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Extensive research there.
Yes, of course.
But anyway, shall we travel back in time for our first
Yes.
article then?
And where are we going to?
So Warren joins us on the sofa
Yes.
as we look at Doomwatch, Project Sahara, which was shown on the 9th of March, 1970.
Ren Tobias Henry, age 26, male physicist.
Hello, Warren!
Oh, hello.
Yes, you are here.
Hello, I'm here.
Yes, I'm here too.
Lisa's always here.
Yeah, I'm always
We're
here.
all on the sofa.
We're
We
all
are.
scrunched up.
You are squashing me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try and get off you. Oh, ow, ow. Right. We have been watching Doomwatch,
Bom, 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 bom.
Project Sahara,
Yes.
haven't we? Although, given the DVD, we've apparently just been watching episode 1.5.
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's our first comment,
Yes.
that the DVD doesn't actually give you the
episode.
the episode
Right.
titles.
So somebody couldn't be bothered to look them up.
So you need to actually go and find a book
Yes.
or the internet,
Or the
to find
internet,
out what you're
yeah.
going to watch. But shall we briefly explain what Doomwatch is?
I think we should.
I guess
Yes,
we
there
should.
might be people out there that have not heard of it.
Yes, 1970.
Eco
Yes.
thriller.
Concerned with the Department of Observation of Scientific Work, or Department of Observation and Measurement of Scientific Work. Yeah, well, it does change from episode to episode.
Paraphrased to Doomwatch, wasn't it? Hence the name of it.
But it's a department to basically keep an eye on what scientists are up to.
Yeah. And they're up to all sorts of nefarious things.
And it's, I think, the underlying attitude from the ministry is this has been set up as a populist department.
Yes, and they're not actually supposed to do anything.
No, and when they do dig up stuff, they should keep their mouths shut.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't.
No, they don't.
No.
But series devised by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, and produced by Terence Dudley.
Yes.
Later they were to sort of fall out a bit, weren't they, shall we say?
Disagreement.
As to which direction the series should go in. But, as we say, it's episode 1.5. Fifth episode shown, but only the third episode that actually exists.
Yes.
Glorious Technicolor.
Just about. It is actually on 625 line videotape, although the tapes are a bit dodgy in places.
A little bit, yep.
Yes. I first came across Doomwatch on some very dodgy tapes, thanks to my good friend Simon. Hello, Simon. When we worked at BDH in Poole.
Is that before or after you blew it up?
I did not blow up BDH, Warren.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry, but the person who was speaking previously before me is an arsonist.
Oh, thank you for that. No, BDH
I did
blew
pronounce
up,
it right as well.
and then I joined it.
Oh right, was
Yeah.
it? Okay, because I always rib you about that one, don't I?
No, I actually joined sometime after it exploded.
Because you thought it looked exciting.
Yeah, I
didn't
thought, that's where I want to work.
Yes. Every day,
That's proper science, that is.
every day's a life risk.
Yes, indeed. But yes, Simon had an enviable video collection, and yes, working in a scientific establishment and watching episodes of Doomwatch was quite fun. Sometimes they do some wonderfully bonkers science. I think the titration they do in the Red Sky with like tubes and glassware and everything like that is, again, what people think science looks like. I've no idea what they're trying to do.
It's the old Frankenstein step.
Yeah, things should bubble and things like that. But
static electricity.
yes, I've jotted down a load of production notes that this is just what we said as we watched the episode.
Yeah.
This episode was broadcast in 1970.
The week you were born.
The week I was born. I was born 2 days later on the Wednesday at midday.
Yes.
Fast asleep.
But it concerns, although the episode title is a bit misleading, because although Project Sahara is about a sort of defoliant thing.
It's only touched upon, isn't it?
Yeah, the whole story is really about security.
Yeah, it's
isn't it?
only the top side.
And computers.
And computers, the use of computers to arrive at opinions on people, whether they're a security risk or not.
Whether they're suitable.
Yes.
The fear of computer, isn't it? The fear of too much logic above intuition.
I mean, in some ways, it's a bit like the Ice Warriors, where you've got they're relying on the computer too much to make the decisions. So,
and haven't we got to that stage now?
I mean, yes, we will. We are planning to talk about computers in some future issues, so we can sort of touch upon that later on. But let me just read out some of the things I've jotted down, and we'll say these are basically, as we say, sort of things that just came to us as we were watching the episode. So we said about the tapes being dodgy. The first thing I've just put is typing.
Oh yeah.
There's varying styles of typing.
Yes,
isn't there?
yes. The in the first scene, the pre-title, because there was always a pre-titles sequence with like a cliffhanger going into the titles.
That drawer, isn't it?
Yes, and there's a technician typing,
Well,
or possibly playing the piano.
what was it you said? It's like Ralph from the Muppet Show playing the piano. Rolf, sorry.
She's typing with her knuckles, not her fingers.
And she's raising her hands up really high to show she's typing.
With bangs on the fingers and bells on the toes. It's
But much later on, there's a shot. The camera pulls back when she's not there, and she's knackered the space bar.
The
Hasn't
space
she?
bar's pushed into the keyboard.
into the house.
So it doesn't really work.
So I've said, why is the monitor covered in a bee's honeycomb?
Yes.
Yes.
Because you've got this computer monitor with photos
Of people.
coming up, and it just looks like the monitor's screen has cracked, doesn't it?
It
There's
does.
this weird overlay on it. I suppose it's to look
Futuristic.
futuristic. I have no idea. But
That would do your eyesight in if you're looking
It
at
will.
it
Yeah.
all day.
All
wouldn't it?
day, yeah. Go on with a headache.
But then we go into the title sequence, which
Yes.
implores us to watch Doom.
Watch
Watch.
Doom, yeah.
Watch
Doom.
Doomwatch. Yeah, sometimes people just call it Watch Doom, don't they? Because that's what it says on the screen.
It does.
I've put tomato trays and triffids.
Yes. Good. Well, they're testing Project Sahara, which is some sort of defoliant.
So the Doomwatch office is just filled with pot plants.
Yeah,
When
there's
you-
just plants everywhere.
Yep. When you finish playing with your triffids,
Goes Ridge.
goes Ridge.
Dr. Ridge, who's one of the staff.
Yes, Ridge.
And he's a proper 70s scientist,
Oh,
isn't he?
he's proper
Yeah.
70s.
Well, he's proper
attitude
70s.
man,
Proper
yes,
70s
yes.
I'm not sure
man,
many.
yes.
Well,
Fantastic shirts and cravats.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
but yeah, we're into colour now, and
Oh,
most of
big
the colour
style.
He's Ridge.
in the series appears on Ridge,
Yes.
doesn't
Yeah.
it?
And it's in your face, isn't it?
Yeah.
In your face Ridge.
Yes.
Spiral staircase, I've
It
put.
goes
Yes.
nowhere, yeah.
There's a weird spiral staircase outside
I
the
think
office.
it's meant to be a fire escape, but the way they've done it, you can see it ends at the window.
And the worrying thing is, if the place caught fire, they could only go to the roof, and as we know, flames arise. Rise.
Mrs. Brian Blessed,
Mrs. Brown Blessed, the future Mrs. Brown Blessed.
right?
She's not the Mrs. Brown Blessed at
Who
this
is?
point. Hildegard Neal.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I've
She
written,
can't be Hilda, she had no rollers in her hair.
I put Pat can actually type.
Yes, she
Pat
can.
can
She's doing
type.
proper typing.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can tell she's typing by the sound the typewriter
Yeah.
makes.
And then when you actually cut to her typing,
She's
in one
typing.
shot, she is typing.
Yes.
And she hasn't knackered the space bar
No.
on a real typewriter.
Well, a real typewriter.
Polo necks,
Yeah.
Oh.
70s.
70s.
Yeah.
Because Quist is in one of two things: a tight shirt, collar and tie, or he's in this constant polo neck. And if you look carefully, he's wearing it's set over about 2 or 3 days, isn't it? In the third day, he's wearing the same polo neck as he wore on
Well,
the first
Mrs.
day.
Quist's washed it again for
There
him.
was no Mrs.
There's
Quist
no
there.
Mrs.
Or his
No.
housekeeper. Or somebody's
good,
washed
good,
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perhaps he just borrowed one of Ridge's polo necks, or Toby's more like it.
No, I don't think Rich wears polo necks. He wouldn't be seen in something
No,
so
he wouldn't. No,
boring.
no, it's got to be garish for Ridge.
Garish,
hasn't it?
yes.
spray can with nothing written on it.
No.
Yeah.
It's
How
been
do they know
painted
what they're
over.
using?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the thing. They've got this spray can, and you should,
Mark it
as
up
a
with something.
scientist,
Yeah.
if it's a toxic chemical,
It should be marked as
There's
It
actually a
should be
triangle
marked.
on there somewhere, shouldn't there?
because somebody just could come up and put it on their hair or something.
Yeah.
So that's a very bad bit of science. I've just written Bayek, which is Bradley.
Brad,
Bradley,
yeah.
He doesn't get a
Brilliant.
lot to do,
No.
but I always enjoy.
But he's always very northern when
Yes.
he
You can
says
imagine
it,
him going
yes.
home with a long trench coat, flat cap, walking his whippet at night,
Stereotype.
having a pint of John Smith's.
No, I've said Ridge's neck.
Rickets.
Rickets. No.
Ridge has rickets.
Oh dearie me. Ridge's neckerchief.
Yes.
Bless
Yes.
you.
And then I've just put BBC Bar.
Oh yes, the
Because we
bar
better
scene, yeah.
explain what happens now. That
Toby
Toby.
Wren, who's played
Toby.
by Robert Powell.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mrs.
Before he
Blessed's
was
future
Jesus.
yes,
is
Um,
before he was Jesus.
Yes. He and Mrs. Brown Blessed are suspended from Doomwatch.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've just got this vision. Oh, no, let's not go there.
oh dear.
Can I come in and tell you about Toby Wren, please?
Come on, behave yourself, you honestly.
Doomwatch. It's actually Doomwatch is thoroughly entertaining. We've just taken a different slant on it
Yes,
this time.
yes.
So we're in the bar.
We're in the bar, the BBC bar,
Yeah.
which has got a horse racing match.
Oh yeah,
Match!
what is it? 5-a-side horse racing?
It's got the longest horse race ever.
Yeah.
Because they're basically just playing the same piece of footage over and over again,
Yeah, 'cause
thinking nobody's going to notice.
I get it that horse tracks are race tracks. God, talking absolute cobblers here. Race tracks are circular.
Yes.
But they're in the bar for how long? Because it was about 11
well,
o'clock in the morning,
yeah.
wasn't it? This place is open at 11 till 3, and then we go off to this
Somewhere
private
else.
bar somewhere,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. So the horses must be knackered by now.
No, I think it's just a case of that they're just feeding them the same piece of footage, thinking nobody will notice.
Yeah.
We did.
Nobody
Yeah.
will ever review
Nobody
this.
will ever watch this again.
Yeah.
Proper 70s cash register.
Oh,
Here
yes.
it goes. Ta-ting!
No sale.
Yeah.
No sale.
Um,
It's an Arkwright one, but
now,
you don't catch
the
your
bit
fingers
that,
in it.
the bit that made you screw your face up, Lisa.
Oh, God, yeah.
Toby's had a little too much to drink,
Yes,
hasn't he?
just a bit.
And he's
He,
trying
he
to
basically asks Hildegard Neil,
Yeah.
who do you keep it for?
Yes.
What did you think of that, Lisa?
I thought you would have got a slap on the face if he'd asked me that.
Okay.
She was very calm about it. She just walked away, really.
Surprised
but
she
yeah.
didn't throw her drink over him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. That's, well, it is the 70s, I suppose. But,
Yeah,
so,
but
yeah.
it's expensive.
Yeah.
But now I've written Nigel Stock plus pipe.
Oh, yes. You always get pipe.
Or
with
Nigel with the stock pipe.
Now, count the fags was the other thing I
yeah.
put.
There's at least 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Just in that bar scene.
Now, this is the thing with Doomwatch. The character, you've got Toby, who's a heavy drinker
Yes.
and heavy smoker.
Yes.
You've got Ridge, who probably does in one of the episodes, doesn't practice safe sex.
No.
No,
He's
he
quite-
likes the ladies.
He's quite a philanderer, so they
Yes.
all have their Achilles heel somewhere.
Yeah,
on
they've
them.
all got flaws.
Absolutely,
They're not
they've got a lot.
perfect human
Yeah.
beings.
I would say the only one that doesn't is Toby.
All right.
Not
Toby?
Toby, sorry. Is
Bradley.
Brad.
Yeah.
That's because he's married. He's got a wife at home. He don't need
Well,
all
does
that,
that
does he?
automatically wipe out any?
Well, yeah, he's beyond all that, isn't he? He's had
Also,
his
he's
young
the only one
days.
that has pens in his pocket.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
so he must be sensible.
Proper scientist.
Yeah.
What, like Les from
Les.
Vic Reeves' Big Night
Yeah.
Out. Yeah. I've written Doomwatch sponsored by Gardener's World and Jeffrey Smith's Fruit Garden. Now, mustard shirts, brown
woeful
ties, and brown trousers.
It's the 70s, everything's
Mr.
brown.
70s walks into the room, doesn't he?
Yes.
Wearing his
Who's
trench
this?
coat. Now,
Philip
Brackley?
Philip Brack?
Bric-a-brac, yes.
Brack.
Philip Brack, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Walks in with the 70s archetypal hairstyle, doesn't
Yes.
he? The
Yeah.
brown suit,
Yeah, mustard shirt.
mustard shirt, and the brown tie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the trench coat on.
Yeah.
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 Welcome to the 1970s.
Yes.
Now, Warren, you spotted a suspicious bread basket, didn't you? And I just wrote two crusty rolls.
Most people have a fruit bowl. I can remember having a fruit bowl in the 70s. For some bizarre reason, on her dining room table, for no reason, there's just a bread basket, as you do.
But that's not the only weird bit of set dressing you spot during the course of this episode, is
No,
it?
there's
Is
a
there?
photograph, but you have to be looking for it.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that in a minute.
Oh, right. So
okay,
another piece.
Well, no, we'll
Okay.
come to the photograph when
Okay.
it appears. But I like the grandfather clock, although it appears to be broken.
Knackered.
It keeps saying the
Very
same.
oriental, you said, wasn't it?
Yeah, it looks sort of talons of wing triangle. But there we go. So what have we got? It never rains outside.
No, never rains.
Because of the
outside.
set design, you always get a sort of backdrop of the sky. Now, how high up do you think they are? We were trying to work out.
About 3 floors, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's everything seems to be below them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Nigel Stock is playing Commander Keeping, isn't he? And you, this is your bad joke, Warren. You said, "Is the national security in safekeeping?" I wonder if that's a deliberate choice of name. Senior service,
Oh, cigarettes.
fags,
Fag.
hidden under the desk.
Yes, the interesting thing is Toby goes to have a cigarette when he goes into Twist's office. Quist's office. Sits at the
Dr.
desk.
Twist.
Dr. Twist.
Yeah.
He takes the large, and they are huge 70s packets, aren't they? But when he takes, other than sort of, you open the packet in front of you, he puts his hand under the lip of the desk, so it covers up the brand name and takes the cigarette out.
All right. So you don't. So you said no filter tip as well. Is
No
that right?
filter.
No, senior
Yeah.
service don't have a filter tip.
Okay.
They are still available.
Are you still smoking them?
Still selling them.
And I put Nigel Stock, agent provocateur.
He does not wear knickers like that.
Now, what is on the... Yes, there's a brown bottle on the desk in Hildegard Neal's
Flat.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. It's a brown bottle with the label turned away, and we've just written, "What is in this bottle? Is it meths or wood preserver?" Now, what did you think it was, Warren?
I thought it was White Horse,
Which is
a Scotch.
all right, okay.
But I didn't think it was because there was some in the glass, and the liquid in the glass had no colour to it.
Oh, interesting. No, I didn't notice.
Which is why you thought it might be meths. Because meths doesn't have colour, does it? So perhaps it's sort of vodka or something.
I'd written, "I'll call you a taxi."
You're a taxi.
Thank you. Hissy soundtrack.
Bacon and eggs.
Yeah, hissy soundtrack, and what's more, noisy cameras.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of clunking.
That's because there's no carpet on the floor. It's a hard floor. Every time Hildegard Neal walks on it, you can hear her shoes clomping, which must be... I hope she's not on the first floor, because if you're living under it, you get...
Yeah, especially
up
the
with
noise
that.
of those cameras moving
Yeah.
around. The wheels need oiling, don't they?
Cut back to Dr. Quist's office. BBC teacup. Liquid in cup for once.
Yeah.
That's always an annoyance in things where people have cups of tea and there's nothing in the cups.
Because you handle it differently when there's liquid in it to when there's not.
And yes, there's a nice 3-shot, isn't there? You said there was a nice bit of camera movement.
Yeah, nice high camera move,
High camera,
which is unusual for this kind of drama.
But that got a nicely framed 3-shot, didn't it? I like that shot.
Because this is directed by Jonathan Olwyn, who does quite a lot of
BBC things.
BBC stuff. Does a few more Doomwatch. But yeah, it was sort of interesting sort of camera movement there. Top secret written on the envelope in big letters.
Stamped on the envelope.
Stamped on it.
Yeah.
Written,
And Project Sahara.
yes.
Not only is it top secret,
It tells you what it is.
So we sent it off to the printers. Could you print us this, please?
It's like that filing clause of Axos that says top secret in
70s font.
Yeah, that's right. So Philip Brack as Jack. Zoom in on envelope, just to make it obvious, and then camera judders. Now, why is Bobby Moore in the kitchen?
Bobby Moore is in the kitchen. There is a shot, and it's a brief shot. I think it's of Brian Blessed's wife-to-be coming out of the kitchen, and over her shoulder is a black and white picture of Bobby Moore. There are no other pictures in that kitchen, and you have to be at a certain angle to be seeing that. So I wonder whether it's put up there as a joke for some bizarre reason.
No idea.
And the camera's just caught it because it has to be shot at a certain angle. And you can just see a picture. It's an A4 piece of paper with Bobby Moore on it.
Very, very
No
weird.
reason at all. There was nothing in the flat to hint there was an interest in football.
Yeah.
And there's-
Either that, or maybe it's a set used from a different programme.
yeah.
And
because
it was
there's,
missed.
there's no utensils hanging up in the kitchen or visible in the kitchen. It's just flats. It's basically flats.
Okay.
But it's a picture of Bobby Moore.
Then I've got, who the hell painted that backdrop? Lesterson brackets Robert James. Nice bust. Because you're in his office and there's this bloke's head turned away from him for some reason.
I was expecting it to...
To
turn
his
round, Malcolm and Wise.
eyes to light up or
Yes.
something like in The Prisoner. And there's a painting.
Yeah, this is the great one, isn't it?
Yeah. And the painting appears to be...
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes.
And who stands in front of the painting?
Nigel Stock.
And Nigel Stock was?
Dr. Watson.
There you go.
Elementary.
With Peter Cushing.
With Peter Cushing. Oh, yes. Now we go to the computer room with the knackered keyboard. And I've written blue screen. And then which is how they obviously... Because it's the only time they actually show it's a blue screen, isn't it? Then the curtains come across. It's like the main feature is over.
I was expecting the young lady to come out with the trays with the Kiora and the ice cream tubs.
And the albatross.
And the albatross with a little torch.
Albatross. Visit your local restaurant and then an organ comes
Only
up.
5 minutes from this theatre.
Yes. Lesterson's hairspray and Quist's Brill Cream.
Yes.
What's Brill Cream, Lisa?
Brill Cream it's like a kind of gel thing that men used to slick their hair. It looks like Brad uses it, actually.
Right.
They used to slick their hair down with to stop it from moving.
He's got a real teddy boy look about him,
Ever.
hasn't he? Yeah.
But do you think Lesterson's more Harmony hairspray?
Possibly.
I must
Is
stop
he or
saying
isn't she?
I must stop saying Lesterson.
Barker was
Robert
known
James.
as
Yeah,
Barker.
Robert James. Okay.
Listen.
No, Warren, this is your fault. I've just written.
It's always my fault.
It's not a Poe. Why did you think?
I got you to stop it, didn't I? I said flowers are in a Poe.
It wasn't. It wasn't a tall pot.
Just a tall pot.
It was too deep to be a Poe.
No.
She might have a weak bladder.
Cut to bric-a-brac shop.
With old Mr. Pipkin in the window.
Not with Brian Cant,
No.
but with Eric Chitty playing old man, who's got a young man as well.
Yes.
You said he was the milk tray man.
He's dressed as a milk tray man.
Not Eric Chitty, the other one.
Or because Eric Chitty likes milk
And I put, is the set on fire?
Yeah, it's meant to be fog outside, so he opens the door and this wave of smoke
That's
comes.
because BDH chemicals are on fire.
Yeah, dry ice.
Oh, is it like Graham Harper's wafting smoke in from outside?
Yeah, don't let Graham Harper anywhere wafting smoke, he gets overexcited.
Because of your milk tray thing, I put all because the lady loves top secret documents.
Ooh.
And there's not much incidental music in this episode,
No.
is there? But you do get a wonderful
Oh, melodramatic sting.
dun 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 sting.
Soon.
Creaky chair, I put.
Oh, yeah.
Robert James has got a
Robert
creaky
James
chair.
has got a creaky. It's like a sort of Reggie Perrin chair, isn't it? And I put, and on the conveyor belt tonight, a fondue set, a cuddly toy, and a corpse.
A Chinese dragon.
And a Chinese dragon.
And a policeman that's too tall for the...
And I
the
put
door.
policeman in a box.
Yeah.
Come on, what's going on here?
Well,
Go on.
it's a viewing window, isn't it? So that you can
Yeah,
see
they're
the
at the
body of a
mortuary.
deceased person
Yeah.
Who is?
who is
Yeah,
her
you go-
boyfriend, her lover.
Jack.
You go through
Jack,
the identity process, but it appears that he's been more scratched.
Yeah. Well, he was dragged
Scratch
along the
them.
road.
Oh, was it? Oh, I missed that
That's
bit.
what they said. He was dragged along behind a car by the sound of it.
He wasn't attacked by the rats.
Wasn't
from
attacked by the
previous
rats,
episode,
no.
no.
Oh, right. I thought the milk tray man had scratched him.
Yeah.
His nose aren't that long.
Then we get some more music, but this is jaunty music.
It's very jaunty music. It's very inappropriate.
Terry and June.
Terry
It's,
and June.
it's a compilation
Terry-
of people doing things.
June's off
isn't
shopping.
it? Yeah.
Cut to Pat typing again.
Yeah, properly.
Probably. We like Pat, don't we?
do like Pat.
We like
Toby
Pat.
does a Bernard Bresslaw impression
He does.
because he's a bright lad.
Yeah. But it's proper private Popperwell, isn't it?
And then Quist gets his moment of triumph.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
Because the whole point about this episode was that they were making decisions based on the computer's recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, Nigel Stocks sort of was on to her boyfriend just through intuition and experience, wasn't it? So that's, I think that's the bit where sort of Quist comes into his own finally, because he can get to do the sort of moral speech bit at the end.
Absolutely.
But what do we think of this as an episode? It's probably not the most memorable of stories, because it doesn't have the sort of shock impact of
So
Tomorrow
Tomorrow
the
the
Rat.
Rat.
or
Plastic Eaters.
plastic eaters.
Or the uncomfortableness of the Red Sky, is it?
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
Who Killed Toby Wren.
Yeah. But I think
Basically every other episode we're trying to... No, that's not strictly true, because I enjoyed this.
I very
did
much enjoyed
enjoy
this,
it, yeah.
and it does actually, for all the taking the pee that we've done,
It's fun. The thing with Doomwatch is sometimes you've got to look with it a bit of fun, but you've got to realise the serious underlying nature. Of
but
the
it's
script
still
and
asking,
message.
I think, important questions
absolutely.
about security and it is the sort of thing of if the computer says something, then computer says no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And it does give the warning about sort of relying on computers to make important decisions that human beings
Yeah, because
Should
with
make.
computers,
Should make.
it's too logical. Yes or no. No grey area.
Yeah.
Human beings, we have a grey area.
So yeah, there you go. So that's
enjoyed
Project
that, yeah.
Sahara.
Yeah.
Good fun.
And that's the highlight of the week that you were born, Warren. There really isn't much else on that week that's worth watching.
Well, there was
I should have crawled back into the womb and waited another year.
well, there was on the buses. We did offer you that.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's
Jo-
mockingly
Jo-
described as comedy, but I'm like a bus. I'm still waiting for the comedy to arrive.
Well, Joe Podcast suggested you do that, but
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
There's Doomwatch, Project Sahara, available on DVD.
And
Absolutely.
it's a great series.
It is
Yeah.
just don't binge on them.
No,
Take them
they're a
one-
little
yeah.
bit hard, not hard to watch, but they probably don't leave you in the best frame of mind if you watch more than one.
No, but
It's worth it for seeing Stephen Dudley's hat in Tomorrow the Rat when he puts it goes, oh look, pussy!
God help us all.
And thank you again to Mr. Warren.
Yes, thank you, Warren, even though you made us all get the giggles.
Well, he just does that. He makes me
Yeah.
laugh. So that's fine.
And once you started, you couldn't stop, could you?
But yes, hopefully Warren will be back very soon.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
Yes, we've got some things planned. So
We have.
we shall see.
Yes.
But now we're very pleased to announce a new voice.
Yes.
Now, we said this issue was going to be a bit short. But
Shorter.
But after we said that, we were very pleased to receive
Yes.
a piece from Mr. Martin Holmes,
Yes.
who's going to introduce himself very shortly. He's interested in doing beginnings of things,
Yes.
which is an interesting idea. So he's going to be looking at episode 1s of things.
He is, yes.
All across the board.
Yes.
And he's already got some very interesting ideas
He
for
has,
where we
yes.
can go with this.
Yeah.
So he'll say hello, talk about episode 1s in general, and then we'll go straight into his piece for this episode, which is about the young ones
Rightio.
from 1982, I believe.
Yes.
I do remember seeing it at the time. I used to very much enjoy the young ones. So over to Martin, then we'll come back, and then you've got something, haven't you?
I have.
So we'll be
Yes.
back soon then.
Yes.
Ta-ra!
Bye-bye.
I've been giving a lot of thought to beginnings recently. Well, to be honest, beginnings are far more enjoyable than the gut-wrenching horribleness that surrounds the average ending. Beginnings are full of hope, possibility, whereas endings are usually about misery and death, and in television terms, knowing that no matter what revivals or reunion movies may come, for the show as you know it, apart from reruns, this is the proverbial it. Goodbyes. I've always had a problem with goodbyes. They're so brutal. This, of course, is something of a new beginning for me, having hidden under a rock full of shyness and fear for several decades, and I'd like to thank Lisa and Andrew for the opportunity for me to at least attempt to do something so very far outside of my comfort zone, and make a new beginning to my relationship with the great big scary world of telly-loving folk, all of whom are probably far more qualified than I am to burble on about such things. Beginnings are kind of why I like pilot episodes too. Somehow, in extremely subtle ways, they can be quite different in mood and tone to the rest of the series, as elements get tweaked or actors become unavailable between the filming of the pilot and the series getting the green light. Quite often, iconic sets have yet to be built, and the shows are shot in what ultimately seems like the wrong house, and characters are slightly altered from the original version. Sometimes, of course, this takes the heart and soul out of what made the pilot appealing in the first place, but usually it just means that, on later viewing, much-loved characters may have the viewer going, what the heck? So a show like Elementary will have the wrong sidekick, a detective who was never seen or heard of again, and Sherlock himself habitually uses an upstairs room with a view across the park that he suddenly chooses never to venture into again. Hill and Renko are shot down mercilessly in the Hill Street Blues opener, only to magically reappear when the producer found them amongst the most appealing characters. There's a nice moment in some of the early New Avengers episodes, where the credit montage uses film from the screen tests of Purdy and Gambit, because the editors didn't have enough action shots. The first episode of MASH bears little relationship to those that follow, and almost none to the film of the book that inspired it. Interestingly, the movie manages in slightly under 2 hours to cover the same 2.5-year war that it took 11 seasons on television and a great many Christmas episodes to get through. Don't get me wrong, some endings are pretty great too. Over 3 decades on, Hawkeye and BJ saluting Colonel Potter in Goodbye, Farewell and Amen can still have this grown man find that he has something in his eye. One of the most famous pilot, not much resembling the show you came to know and love, stories is, of course, Star Trek, where even the less cerebral and more action-adventure and almost unheard of second pilot has set designs, characters and costumes that don't much look like those in the episodes surrounding it. Incidentally, Where No Man Has Gone Before remains one of my personal favourites and is well worth checking out if you get a moment. Even our perennial British television stalwart, Doctor Who, had the pilot episode shot, and it was also one that was rejected and refilmed with subtle changes, mostly to remove some studio gaffes, but also to soften the more unearthly aspects of the alien lead characters and to add more of an air of mystery to their backgrounds, both of which were probably very strong factors in making the show the long-running phenomenon that it has become over the past half-century and more. My own relationship with Doctor Who has some quite vague beginnings. Nowadays, I tend to believe that I became a fan because somebody bought me The Target in An Exciting Adventure with the Daleks paperback back in 1973. But I can remember being rather giddy with excitement when I heard that there was going to be a Radio Times special magazine that year and dashing to the newsagents to pick up my copy. A long time ago, I wrote an article for the Doctor Who Appreciation Society's TARDIS magazine, in which I recollected my earliest memories of watching the show. I have vivid recollections of Patrick Troughton complaining about the redecoration of the TARDIS in The Three Doctors, and a few earlier memories of scenes from Colony in Space and the Demons and the Sea Devils, but not much earlier. In fact, I suspect that most of my more vivid recollections come from the compilation repeats that used to turn up from time to time during those years, usually when the cricket finished early. Back then I didn't think much of cricket, but sudden unexpected Doctor Who somehow seemed utterly magical to me, and got me well and truly hooked. It's a slight irritation that my big sister, who used to borrow my Target books to read in the bath, once saw a picture of the Dalek Emperor, I think it must have been in my Radio Times special, and told me she remembered that one. I don't. I was 3 years old when that now lost classic was on. I cannot overestimate just how influential those Target books were in making me into a fully fledged bona fide Doctor Who enthusiast. Even now, those first couple of dozen books, mostly based on John Pertwee stories that somehow fail to be quite as exciting as they were on the page, fill me with a joy that's hard to explain. Those are the ones that still get my buying finger twitching when the audiobook versions appear on sale, and yes, as a 50-something bloke with no kids, I do have a house full of audios of what are essentially children's books. There's still a box full of the ones I had as a kid too, and I think that the only way I'll ever be willingly parted from them is when they chuck all my stuff into a skip after I've fled this mortal coil. Oddly enough, since the episodes have become mostly available on video and DVD, those earliest memories are becoming slightly less certain as the gaps have been filled in by being able to watch the episodes in full whenever I like, and having done so several times over the years.
Once in every lifetime comes a love like this. Oh, I need you, you need me. Oh, my darling, can't you see, young one? Darling, we're the young one. The young one. Shouldn't be afraid to live, love. There's a song to be sung, 'cause we may not be the young ones. 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 'Cause we may not be the young ones.
A full 6 months before The Blackadder arrived on BBC One with all its budget-busting attempts to become a new vehicle for one of the corporation's rising stars, a very different show appeared over on the other side, by which I mean, of course, BBC Two, where 4 rising stars from a very different comedy background were given an opportunity to create a brand new something. I'm going to mull over the strange lentil-scented brew that is Demolition, the very first episode of The Young Ones, the BBC's valiant effort to contain, control and attempt to understand the shiny new alternative comedy scene and shape it into the familiar form of the sitcom. Ironically very much aimed at young adults in a way that it would itself satirise within this very episode. The Young Ones blew a veritable hurricane across a television landscape that was almost bereft of entertainment aimed at that particular age group. Channel 4 was looming large, and having launched just a week earlier, it looked as if it might be going to play terribly well with the youth audiences that the BBC were failing to engage with, and this series looked very much like it might tick all the right boxes. Strangely, the choice to make them students does already distance them from much of the disaffected young and poor of the Thatcher years, but the general air of anarchy seems to have appealed regardless. That said, I was a student myself around that time, albeit not a particularly rebellious one, and I had a friend who maintained that there was more fun to be had in the average episode of Terry and June than anything this show had to offer. Some people are born contrary, I suppose, or maybe he had a point. The summer after this series was on, I was unlucky enough to attend one of those parties held in the house of someone with terribly well-off parents, and at about 2 o'clock in the morning, someone declared amid the carnage that they had a tape with all 6 episodes of The Young Ones on it, and they hijacked a room in which to watch it, as the sleeping drunks lay all about him. I think I managed 4, and it felt as if my mind had been bludgeoned with a misery bomb as I sloped off towards mattresses new. It was so relentless in its faux anarchy that you really felt as if your entire consciousness had been beaten up and spat out whilst you were pogoing in a mosh pit. If that mosh pit had been a comfy sofa in a dark suburban living room, and I'd even known back then quite what a mosh pit was. 3 performers well known amongst the alternative comedy scene, Ade Edmondson, Nigel Planer and the already familiar Rick Mayall, mainly to television comedy viewers from his Kevin Turvey stints on A Kick Up the 80s, were teamed up with an actor, Christopher Ryan, to create 4 deadbeat yet distinct character types, unfortunate enough to be sharing some frankly terrible student housing as they worked on their degrees at Scumbag College, whilst trying to avoid paying their rent to their landlords, the various members of the Belofsky family, as played by comedy club compere Alexei Sale. So far, so very middle-class suburban. Nevertheless, watching it all again now, it all seems rather as if it's trying just a little bit too hard, and whilst the performers are eager to show off their alternative comedy credentials, they also seem not to want to upset the apple cart back the hand that feeds, or basically annoy the BBC too much, as if knowing full well that their own personal future successes and ambitions are very much dependent upon that establishment behemoth. There is very much a sense that this is as close as the BBC ever gets to broadcasting full-on anarchy in the UK, even though there's a cosy tendency to cut away just where the expected expletive should be, whilst trying to make some sense of what this new alternative comedy thing that the young people find quite appealing might actually be, and whether they ought to be doing some of it. See also Nosing Around. That's right, nosing with a Z, because that's the kind of show we are. Ben Elton plays one of the performers in that segment, and he's also the co-writer along with Rick Mayall and Lisa Meyer. Alexei Sale provides additional material, and that's the core of what become the writing team behind a heck of a lot of 1980s comedy. That said, as directed by Paul Jackson, it's an odd beast, as a collection of forces of nature try their best to weld themselves into a coherent whole. As a slice of the world as we lived it in 1982, it does all feel rather too familiar. Much of it fails, some of it spectacularly, and yet somehow it all sort of works. Sort of. Much like life, really, if you think about it. The episode itself opens with Rick Mayall's, for I think it is him, semi-terrible performance of Cliff Richard's The Young Ones single being played out over some frankly quite terrible wacky graphics that show, perhaps in an homage to the Monkees, on a quartered screen of some low-grade video disc, photographs taken on some dreadful campus somewhere introducing our 4 heroes and their various character traits. Ade Edmondson's anarchic pseudo-punk, Vivian, with a penchant for, of all things, Hawkwind, electrocutes himself comedically. Over a series of stills, Rick Mayall's Rick is all peace signs and anti-nuclear symbols. Nigel Planer's Neil is very much the bored, yawning hippie, and Chris Ryan's Mike is seen having bribed his way to a degree, so perhaps we must assume he's, Lord help us, a postgraduate. Maybe that's overthinking it. Or one of those people who seem to hang around on campus for several decades beyond their initial 3 years for whatever reason. We all knew one of those people. That said, the line, "shouldn't be afraid," from the song backing the credits, is the definitive version, and is now the only way it should ever be performed, especially by people of a certain age. The final line of the song that we hear, "But we may not be the young ones, but we may not be the young ones," gets stuck in a loop and doesn't fade as we cut to Rick dancing to himself on the radio in a frankly hideous kitchen also populated by Neil. And as Rick switches himself off and announces just how brilliant that was, a full quarter century before Facebook bludgeoned the meaning to death and beyond, his character is immediately sketched in as he and Neil spend a full 5 minutes discussing Cliff Richard, lentils and poetry. To be fair, they don't so much discuss Cliff as Neil basically asks, "What about Cliff Richard?" and Rick, as he will, takes massive offence at this perceived slight, which is of course, to anyone who's ever talked to another human being ever, a perfectly judged and characteristic response. We then get the Nigel Planer hot pan of lentils scene, which is very strangely performed. Throughout this scene it appears as if Neil is acting on a stage and is very much playing to the audience as if this is one of his familiar comedy club routines. Perhaps it was. Anyway, lentils, or dinner as the characters like to think of it, ends up on the floor just in time for Rick to walk through and read his poetry from. A full 5 minutes in, Mike arrives, played by a real actor, and gives a peculiar performance as he's not entirely sure what he's doing here, or what's going to happen next. Also intercut with this sequence are the first of the young one's rather legendary appalling puppets, a pair of rats who, in their first sequence, discuss the various cuisine on offer in the various houses around the neighbourhood, and in the second, after one has been bludgeoned by a guitar built out of matchsticks by a relative of Neil's, and retrieved from a terrifyingly horrific refrigerator, one eats the other because it's what he would have wanted. Back at the kitchen table, there's a dispute over the bread that has been spent. Neil then taps the lentil pan and calls for the first of several house meetings to explain that the extortionate £4.50 each was because he'd made 13 lots of food because he's going to kill himself, which he then departs to do, much to the ambivalence of all the others. Ah yes, the suicide jokes of the early 80s. Always fun. Then, a full 10 minutes into the episode, Vivian bursts through the wall, bearing the exposition. The council's going to knock the house down, and proceeds to spend the rest of the episode demolishing it from the inside so that they can't. Throughout the rest of the episode, you'll see possibly the wobbliest walls that you would ever see on British TV since that one on Fawlty Towers, and you might notice with not a police box or a Dalek in sight. Vivian also brandishes the leg he's got from the morgue that he's supposed to write an essay on. Take a drink if there's a reference to university studies, but he thinks he might attach it to the front of his car. It's a nice subtle touch as the bright yellow Ford Anglia with Go Faster flames painted on it that we see him driving in the location work later does indeed bear that very leg as its own version of the Silver Lady. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. First of all, we have to see the after effects of Neil's typically well-planned suicide attempt, where everything works except the length of the rope. Happily for Neil, this was not witnessed by anyone, or so he thinks. We cut away to the first outsiders seen in the show. A couple of dreadful hags in the best theatrical tradition, sitting on a passing bus, saw the whole thing, and end up remarking unsympathetically on the stupid hippie, and saying that he needs a good, hard cut to studio. For the rest of the studio-based part of the episode, Neil will be confined to sitting on a toilet, and the running gag of him getting soaked in various ways, from a soil pipe broken by Vivian on his demolition quest to the cistern collapsing. Meanwhile, downstairs, in the best tradition of those early Venus Smith Avengers episodes, we have a musical interlude, with 9 Below Zero, a kind of proto-The Jam combo, blasting out one of their hot tunes. Rather catchy little number, I thought. Stuck in my head for a while, but I've forgotten it now. Actually, the sudden unexplained appearance of some rock and roll combo or other is another of the things that stick in the memory from watching the young ones back then. I seem to remember it had something to do with getting an entertainment or variety budget or some such. The band seldom interacted with much with the cast, apart from Suggs from Magnus, I seem to remember. And they were all very much from the alternative music scene, which did rather appeal to those of us so despairing at the blandness of most telepap music back then. Vivian and Rick headbang furiously along with the music, while Mike remains unmoved, sitting in position, waiting to continue the cutaway edit later. And so, having reached around the halfway mark, the anarchy continues. This is television seriously playing around with itself, as it were, with ever longer interludes unrelated to the main plot sitting alongside Vivian's various attempts to bring down the house. The Godfather alternative comedy, Alexei Sayle, suddenly arrives as a heavily accented member of the Bolofsky family, possibly Jersey, judging by the 50s Hancockian hat and overcoat, pretending that he's a full British citizen by making outrageous references to Bobby Charlton and so on. Breaking the fourth wall, he launches into one of his classic angry monologues in his more familiar Liverpool drawl, starting with, "I'm not really foreign, you know," and then, with a quick back to the acting, he's back in character and being financially outwitted by our heroes before departing to return in the next episode. Mike gets a chance to play a rather lame "I never knew there was so much in it" gag with an edition of the TV Times. Younger viewers may not recognise that well-known advertising slogan, and despite the mountain of garbage that does fall out of it, it's possibly now most interesting for having Dennis Waterman and George Cole on the cover promoting a new series of Minder. Rick settles down in front of the telly to watch some brand new telly programme aimed last at young adults, also it is claimed. This is, of course, the nosing around sequence mentioned earlier, and whilst it does have a lot to say about television's notions of what youth programming ought to be about, not being able to drink in pubs at 16 mostly, and unhip university professors with names like Roland Purvisell, nicely underplayed by Anthony Sharp, trying to look trendy and spout meaningless drivel about youth unemployment. Although I must stress you have to have a degree. All to a techno beaten with ghastly presenters. It does seem to hang around just a little bit too long, although as an old Oxford Roadshow viewer I did enjoy Christine Ellerbeck on the gantry, scaffolding, for no good reason at all, and this does serve to remind me that Ben Elton did spend rather too many years fronting that particular kind of programme later. That smug git persona he was portraying never seemed far enough removed from actual smug gittishness, if you know what I mean. Mercifully, Rick smashes in the unconvincing blue screen TV in frustration, and the eschewing Demolition brings us crashing through a wall where Cyril Shaps and Hilary Mason take us through a strangely touching Brechtian, or maybe it's Chekhovian, interlude lamenting the passing years over the heat of a fading light bulb. This is all underplayed beautifully as Rick decides to complain about the noise, and Vivian proceeds to carry on with ever more demolition to increasingly fragile-looking scenery. With some relief, we leave the studio and spend the last several minutes of the show burning up the location filming budget on a chilly-looking snowy morning somewhere in the suburbs of London. Rick is hanging from a shockingly daring crucifix in protest at the impending demolition of his home, which I imagine was intended to be shockingly daring, but I imagine would get far more reaction in these easily offended times than it did at the time. I suspect that the target demographic probably just thought it was funny, and those who might have been offended, apart from one or two more devout students, probably turned it off during the first 5 minutes anyway. Mike, meanwhile, had donned a pair of ghastly skiing sunglasses, and having found out that the council representative is a woman played by Maggie Steed no less, sets about trying out, and apparently succeeding with, his best seduction techniques. Neil gets to do more prattling about with massive lentil-filled saucepans, and Vivian takes on the demolition team in his souped-up Ford Anglia with aforementioned human leg attachment. An aeroplane is spotted, and with our heroes firmly signposting what's about to happen, as a tribute to Quatermass and the Pit probably, we cut to the interior of a very unconvincing cockpit, inside which Andy de la Tour and that Paul Bradley bloke who used to play Nigel on EastEnders when I used to watch it, basically crashed the plane into our heroes, their house, and I imagine most of the street, as we cut to some frankly bunkless and yet utterly memorable end credits music. Perhaps I ought to have issued a spoiler alert because they all die at the end. Although of course they don't. Next week they would be back in a more structurally sound and far more iconic set to discover oil and listen to Radical Posture and sing Dr. Martin's Boots at them, but that's for another day. It's hard to explain what an impact the young ones actually made upon the TV comedy scene in the 80s. Much like the alumni from Not the 9 O'Clock News and the Fry and Laurie Footlights gang, most but not all of the comic strip performers would be pretty much everywhere within a very short space of time, and shaping what we saw on all 4 channels for much of the next decade or so, and leaving this show behind them as they went. Like the BBC's Fawlty Towers, there would only ever be 12 episodes made, and unlike Tom and Jerry, upon which a lot of Rick and Aid's comedy seems to be based, these characters would not survive their final bus ride to oblivion, at least not until Cliff answered their call. Their influence is phenomenal though, it gets everywhere. While I was working on this piece, I suddenly remembered my own small contribution to their legacy, a comic strip drawn very poorly about 3 years later for a Doctor Who fan magazine. I suddenly remembered drawing it. I wasn't even sure I'd ever actually sent it off, but after a brief rummage through the attic of my own crumbling pile of a home, I found it, written and drawn in those pre-Google days from memory, and adapting some of the best gags. You know what? I even thought some of those gags were still quite funny, which means that despite everything, the original probably was too. The young ones would go on for another 11 episodes over 2 short series, and it would get far better, tighter, and far funnier, leaving some genuine all-time comedy moments behind it, as well as a classic #1 charity single, and it sparked a lasting legacy of other notable sitcoms before the young ones started getting far less young and began doing stupid things like dying far too young. Because sadly, even for the people's poet, it seems we may not all be the young ones very long.
Thank you very much to Martin for
Yes,
that.
thank you, Martin. It's a lovely article.
Now,
Very
I
interesting.
do remember his Young Ones cartoons.
Oh, right, okay.
I remember them because I think they were in TARDIS,
Yeah.
which was the Doctor Who Appreciation Society sort of quarterly magazine, not the actual newsletter, Celestial
No.
Toy Room, but
And with stories and things in.
yeah, at the time TARDIS was the sort of the actual fanzine version.
Yeah.
And yes, I do remember those.
Right, okay.
I did enjoy them at the time because I just
Okay.
thought it was a rather clever idea. But yes, as we said, hopefully Martin will be back very
I think
very
he
soon.
He
He probably will be because he's already submitted some more stuff,
Yes.
which is fantastic. I say it's always
It is.
brilliant when
Yes.
when
Like having new voices.
when people sort of volunteer stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, it takes it off our shoulders.
It does,
Yeah.
yes.
But now, for your birth thing,
My birth week.
your birth week,
My birth week.
you're going to be looking at Ace of Wands,
I am.
and you've actually got your Ace of Wands top on,
I
haven't
have,
you?
yes.
Yeah. Where did you get that from?
I got that from Redbubble, and it's another Clayton Hickman special.
Ah, yes,
So-
of course.
Yes.
But what was on the week you were born then in Ace of Wands
In
terms?
Ace of Wands, it's actually the first episode of The Power of Atep.
Ooh.
Jet white dove, snowblack snake, time is fast. From the edge of mystery, where running is no race. Ages like careless thing, when it reaches out a high to touch the edge of destiny. A story with no end. Tarot cards, tarot phenomenon, tarot cards wherever you can. Tarot cards, tarot phenomenon.
So,
Yes.
The Power of Atep.
The Power of Atep. Yeah, it's not the best Ace of Wands story of that season. That's probably the next one along, which is Peacock Pie.
Ah, I
With the,
I do like Peacock
Written
Pie.
by
PJ
PJ
Hammond.
and starring the wonderful Brian Wilde.
Mm-hmm.
But The Power of Atep is a perfectly serviceable story. It's your Egyptology story. Every sci-fi and fantasy series has to have an Egyptology story
At some point.
at some point, apart from Blake Seven, because that's in space and there aren't Egyptians in space. But even I've done an Egyptology story because
Oh, you better explain that.
about
yeah.
20
When was it?
23, 24 years ago. Andy Ching. Hello, Andy. He wrote a story. He's very interested in Egyptology, and he
Yeah.
wrote a story called Child of Anubis.
So this was for a
This
video.
was a video, an amateur sort of filming thing. And I played the curator, even, not the creator, the curator of the British Museum.
Ah,
So I had a scene with Nick, who was playing the professor of Egyptology and was involved in the main part of the action. I was also...
did you actually film in the British Museum? or
He
not?
filmed in there. We just filmed outside.
All right.
And
In the days that you could.
In the days that you could. You'd probably get arrested now, because if you've ever been to the British Museum recently...
They do bag searches.
They do bag searches
and all that.
and make sure you haven't got any sharp things and everything. I also did a bit of filming in Salisbury. I was the shoulder of a policewoman.
You didn't play the whole policewoman,
No,
you just played the
you just saw my back and sort of the back of me. And I was also
You're in some sort of
somebody's
care home
carer.
or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
in Nick's back garden.
All right.
Yeah, in a bright yellow t-shirt, because that's all I had.
You said about changing your costume.
I
or something.
did, yeah, because it was the middle of summer, so it was quite hot, and I had this sort of suit that I was going to wear. So I had a long skirt on, and I had to change it for a short skirt. So rather than go inside, the short skirt was a wraparound one, so I literally just wrapped it around my other skirt and pulled the other one off underneath without exposing myself to anybody. And then did the reverse, pulled it up over and pulled the other one off.
It's always glamorous filming.
It's very
isn't
glamorous, yeah. I
And
mean, I could have got in and used the toilet, but I don't know if you had to queue then or not. So because now you have to queue to get in as well because of the bag searches. But so that's my little sort of contribution to the world of Egyptology.
Anyway, back to Ace of Wands.
What we were supposed to be talking about, yes.
Now,
Yes.
what is Ace of Wands?
Ace of Wands.
Who's in it?
Oh,
what have we got?
who's in it? Oh gosh. Well, it's created by Trevor Preston,
Mm-hmm.
who has written for a lot of different series, including The Sweeney.
Yes.
And he sort of thought that there was nothing really. A lot of children liked watching drama programs that were aimed at adults. And he thought, what if we could create something that children like to watch, but adults like to watch as well? And that's basically what he does. And Ace of Wands is it's all around the lead character of Tarot. He goes through many other names, and I haven't written them down, but it's in the book there if you wanted to have a look. But yeah, he's got lots of other possible names.
Oh, it was a bit like Adam Adamant.
Yes,
lives
lots
in
of sort of variously silly names. And he's a magician. He's a stage magician. But you don't know what he is.
Yeah.
You don't know about his parents. You don't know where he's come from.
So who plays him?
Michael Mackenzie.
Right, thank you.
Who got the job at the last minute. Apparently they were getting quite desperate to find someone to play, and they were coming up to the first production session, and they watched him cross the car park, and he obviously looked around. They went, yeah, he'll do.
He walked in an interesting way,
yes.
wasn't it?
Yeah. So the first and second seasons also star Judy Lowe as Luli, who's his assistant, and Tony Selby, or Selbs as we like to refer to him, as Sam, who's his sort of man about town.
Mm-hmm.
You need a bit of muscle, Sam's your man. Unfortunately, the first two series of Ace Wands do not exist in any format.
No.
They've all been wiped from the archives.
I mean, we always face this problem in shows that we sort of cover.
Yeah.
But Ace of Wands is, because there's nothing existing of the first few seasons, I never feel I've quite got a handle on it.
No.
There's too much missing, and of course, as always, it seems to be that the missing stuff is perhaps the more interesting.
It's the good stuff,
or the better stuff.
The better stuff. You got a story from series 2, Seven Serpents, Sulphur and Salt.
I mean, we've talked about this before,
with the wonderful Russell Hunter as Mr. Stabs.
Yes.
And it's such a shame that doesn't exist because it looks wonderful. But it's a little bit offbeat. Even though it's aimed at children, it's slightly off kilter. It's not your standard children's. So it's not Freewheelers or anything like that, which are a bit more action adventure.
I mean, it was later replaced by the Tomorrow People, and we did do some polls on Twitter and Facebook,
and Tomorrow People won.
But only just. It wasn't
not by much.
Considering how... I think the thing is, most people of our age probably know the Tomorrow People a lot better than they know Ace of Wands.
Because it exists.
Yeah, because it exists.
In its entirety.
So considering the sort of handicap of its sort of, being a bit more obscure, I think Ace of Wands did fairly well in that. And somebody like Paul, for instance, he really likes Ace of Wands.
He does. He does.
He finds it more interesting than much of the Tomorrow People.
But, and... So by the time we get to the Power of Atep, we're into the third season.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a new producer.
Yeah.
And Sam and Lily have moved on.
Yes.
So you get 2 new companions for Tarot, for want of a better word. And that's Chaz and Mickey, who are introduced in the first story of the season, which is the previous story, which is the Meddlers.
So that's Roy Holder and Petra Markham.
Petra Markham. Yep. And they work quite well. Roy Holder's a bit of the comic relief, I think.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to get knocked out or fall over or do something, it's usually Roy Holder. He's there to sort of provide a bit of the comedy. He's not the hard man that Sam is. And I say that, I can't watch it and see, so that's just reading on what Sam is intended to be. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Power of Atep is, it starts out with
the Gumbies, isn't it?
Gumbies, yeah.
You've got this sort of dream sequence, because Taro and Mickey are both dreaming the same dream, aren't they? And there's all these worshippers.
Yes.
And they're going, Atep, Atep.
Yeah.
And they sound really gormless.
They do sound really gormless.
It just sounds like they should be there with knotted hankies and gumboots going, my brain hurts.
Yeah. So basically they try and work out. Well, Mickey tries to work it out. Tara doesn't really seem that bothered, to be honest.
It's always happening to him,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
It's just like normal.
I mean, weird dreams.
Weird dreams.
When do I get weird dreams?
Yeah,
I had
you
a
do
dream
get weird
today
dreams.
that I'd fallen through the stairs.
Yes.
And I was like trapped next door
Yeah.
under the stairs
I
or
don't know
something.
how would you get next door through the stairs.
I don't know, it was weird.
Yes, so you'd just be in the cupboard under the stairs with all the magazines.
No, I was by their front door and I had to climb up through the stairs, but I couldn't fit because I was too big.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. That's thrown you, hasn't it?
Yes. Anyway, Mickey decides that she doesn't really investigate further, but she gets a leaflet through the door from a medium called John Pentacle, which is, that.
How many pentacles do you know in your real life?
I've never heard anybody called Pentacle, and the fact that he's a medium is a little bit suspicious. And this will follow up later in the story because he's not all that he seems.
Mm-hmm.
Tara, on the other hand, goes to see Mr. Sweet, who is he's the sort of fourth member of the team.
Yeah.
And he used to run a bookshop. Now he's living in a university.
Yeah.
And he's sort of the expert. If you don't know anything, you go and ask Mr. Sweet, and he normally knows.
He's the internet.
He's the internet, yeah, basically.
But if you go and ask Mr. Sweet, you'll probably get the right answer, unlike the internet.
Yes, but you quite often get the wrong answer. And Tara goes to see him, and I think he mentions Atep, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And Atep's mummy has just been stolen from the British Museum. Now, bearing in mind, this is 1972,
mm-hmm.
and Tutankhamun is doing a world tour.
Is he?
Yes.
Doing his one-man show.
His one mummy show. So at this current moment, when this has been filmed and shown, Tutankhamun's mummy is at the British Museum.
So I'm just looking at the dates, and the recording date for episode 1 is the 6th of June 72. Transmission is the 9th of August.
Yes.
5:20 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Getting 3.8 million viewers, by the way.
Which is pretty good for a kid's show.
Not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
So, there's a lot of Egyptology in the air at this moment, which is possibly what made Victor Pemberton, who's the writer.
we should say this is written by Victor Pemberton, yes.
Think of it. So anyway, basically they end up with this book, The Power of Atep, and it's all about Atep.
I love the font on the front.
It uses the same font as the series uses.
Yeah, which is you're going. Somebody just stuck that on with Letraset.
Yeah. And Atep was apparently a powerful priest and magician to the pharaoh Tutmosis III. I think it's Tutmosis III. I haven't got it to hand.
Hang on, I've got the Ace of Wands viewing notes by Andrew Pixley, so I'll just skim through them very briefly if you carry on talking.
So he's meant to be really powerful.
Yeah.
And you get a sequence where Mr. Sweet can apparently hear Atep's voice, and he's saying about kill Taro. And then Mickey's gone to a seance held by John Pentacle, and you get it here, and you get it there as well.
Right.
Meanwhile, Taro has decided this is the time to practice his escapology.
Oh yeah, they chuck him in Teddington Lock.
And they chuck him in Teddington Lock, which looks freezing cold.
Michael Mackenzie says that he because he was acting the part, he could be more brave, but he still looks...
But then I think he's meant to, as the character, because the character is supposed to get stuck, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I think that's why he looks the way he looks. But he doesn't look that brave when he comes out. But you wouldn't, would you? He's probably swallowed a load of dirty, horrible, water of the Thames. So, that's the cliffhanger to episode 1. Because each episode ends on a cliffhanger. It's very much the Doctor Who format of... it's not quite 25 minutes, probably about 22 or 23, because you get the advert break, and it ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
So episode 2, they don't go to Egypt in episode 2. That's episode 3, isn't it? Yeah, episode 2 is basically them trying to work out what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a padder episode. It's a bit of padding in there where they go to and fro from places, and they go back to John Pentacle's house, and there's nobody there apart from a tramp. You get comedy tramp. So, yeah, and basically they end up in Egypt. But obviously it's not Egypt.
I was going to say there's film work and some OB work as well.
Yes,
which
the
doesn't
OB
quite
work
join together,
is in a quarry somewhere.
Well, they've got a camel.
They've got a rather confused looking camel.
And a Jeep stroke Land Rover.
Land Rover and some ponies to make it look like Egypt. It doesn't really look that much like Egypt. It's shot quite nicely. There's some really nice high shots in actually.
Yeah,
I'm really surprised.
Yeah, when they've climbed up to do those shots, I went, oh, actually somebody's made some effort there. Yeah.
And there's a shot in episode 1 where, because Taro lives on a boat at this point, and there's a shot where it's shot behind his Ozymandias. We haven't mentioned Ozymandias. That's his owl.
Oh, Fred Owl.
Fred Owl, who is now Frederica Owl.
All right.
Because it's Fred Owl's sister. So they've called the Frederica Owl. And yeah, they shoot it behind him. So you've got the owl in the foreground of the shot and Taro in the background. And it's really rather nice. It's really been thought out quite well. So yeah, it is nicely shot. But the third episode sees them in Egypt. And it's a bit of padding.
Is that where you've got Ali Bongo's snake?
Is that episode 3 or episode 4? I think that might be episode 4.
I think that's when they first go to Egypt, isn't it?
It's episode 3. Yeah, they needed a snake in coming out of a basket, and obviously you can't really get a cobra in because it's a bit dangerous. So, and nobody at Thames was really capable of, because you haven't got the background of like the BBC effects, which you obviously get on the BBC. Ali Bongo made a snake, and it's not bad. It's.
Should we explain who Ali Bongo is?
Ali Bongo is their magical advisor.
Yes.
Because obviously Taro has to do magic because he's a stage magician, and Ali Bongo was really quite well known at this time.
He'd appear on a lot of kids shows.
He did,
and things.
as the Sheikh of Araby.
The Shriek of
Araby. Sorry,
Shriek of Araby. Like,
and he'd do magic and
with a moustache and curly
and he had
slippers.
oofle dust, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he used to shake his oofle dust over stuff. And I'm making gestures. This really doesn't work on audio. And do magic. But he was David Nixon's magical advisor, and he later, David Nixon, the magician, and he later went on to advise Paul Daniels. Mm-hmm. So he did a lot of advising, but he used to teach Michael Mackenzie stuff.
Yeah.
And stuff they couldn't do practically, they would do with effects.
Mm.
But you have to bear in mind, Thames was still learning at this point because they didn't have the background that you would get on other channels. No. So if it looks a bit rough and ready sometimes, that's because they're just trying stuff. And, fair play to them, a lot of the time they put it off.
Now, this new character turns up, Fergus.
Fergus
Wilson.
Fergus Wilson, who's an archaeologist.
Yeah.
Though he looks a bit scruffy to be an archaeologist, but maybe,
Archaeologists are scruffy. I've met archaeologists.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose you're right, Phil, yeah.
I was going to say, you've been to the pub with the odd archaeologist, haven't you?
One archaeologist.
Yeah. Well, I've been to the pub with lots. Yeah. I once went to the pub with an archaeologist who said now, where was it? He was doing some work on, I think, snails in cliffs. Mm-hmm. So I think he was like somewhere like Brighton or somewhere like that, and he was like lowered over the edge in a basket to get the layers of snails that were in the cliff. And he was staying in some bed and breakfast, and a sort of landlady happened to mention that another archaeologist had been there a couple of weeks beforehand. Mm-hmm. And this chap found out this was true when he found the previous archaeologist's trousers under the bed. So there you go. Yeah,
okay.
So,
all right. Okay.
There you go.
So, anyway, so getting back to what we were actually supposed to be talking about. So yeah, so they did all the stuff in Egypt, and there's a lot of apparently psychic things going on because Mickey gets given this little figure, which was actually Victor Pemberton's. It's a little sort of mummy figure, isn't it? Yeah. Which is used as a psychic focus. So, and you get to the last episode, and you have this thing where Taro gets shut in Atep's tomb.
Yeah.
With John Pentacle, or as he is otherwise known. Now, what's he called? Quabal, who his ex-stage partner.
Yes.
Which just happens, he's out for revenge. This whole thing has been about getting revenge on Taro because he dropped him from the act because he wasn't very good.
Didn't they? Yes.
Yeah. So, So yeah, he does this face-off thing, and then basically it just sort of peters out at the end.
Stops, doesn't
It
it?
just stops. Nothing really resolves it. He says that Atep wasn't at all powerful. He was just some sort of piffling court magician.
Now, this is the sort of criticism we sort of made of the story.
Yeah.
That you either do it so that you have awoken some ancient power, and in which case the resolution surely is that Taro has some great psychic battle with it, with perhaps Mickey and Chaz, providing backup in some way. Mickey is as maybe a sort of psychic focus.
Yes, because she's got a link with Taro.
Yeah, and Chaz doing sort of beating up John Pentacle or something like that. So you could either do it like that, or you say it's complete nonsense, and it's all been a load of tricks by Quabal in the first place. But this sort of resolution appears to be like halfway between, doesn't it? It's almost as though they couldn't decide which way to go with it.
So they decided to do both.
Yeah, and sort of there's this sort of voice, isn't it, at the end, and Chaz just tells it to shut up, and it does.
Yeah, and then they do Star Trek laughing at it.
And it's that sort of ha 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 ha. That's the end of the episode. Yeah. So it is a little disappointing. I thought the actual ending. There's no great battle at the end or anything like that. I mean, there's a few magic tricks and things like that because they're like sort of producing flowers, like sort of John Pertwee and things like that. But
I mean it's a perfectly watchable story, but as you said, none of these things we've chosen for these episodes are particularly spectacular.
But I think it's interesting in that we've just effectively landed on random episodes, and in some ways that's more true of the series than choosing to look at a particularly good one, which I'd say Peacock Pie is, or a particularly bad one. So this is like the standard.
This is a bulk standard
for the series,
episode.
and it's perfectly fine. I'm not in a hurry to watch it again particularly, but
going
through it, it was interesting all the way through, and
it's fun. It's possibly more fun than Tomorrow People in the fact that it's not. Tomorrow People can be a bit overly serious and preachy about. Which is good because it's, I mean, especially with the fact that you get characters in the Tomorrow People that are not your standard white males. You get Elizabeth, who's a woman of colour. I don't know if that's how you should say it, but still. And you get Tyso, who's in the gypsy community. So yeah, and obviously I think Breaking Out is all about possibly being gay and coming out as that kind of person. So yeah, The Tomorrow People is a good series in that way, but Ace of Wands is fun. You can watch it and there's nothing serious in it. It's just 25 minutes of entertainment.
I mean, you have the thing with Ace of Wands, of course. I mean, not wishing to spoil how the final episode ends, but
well, it is 40 odd years old.
Yeah, but I think they sort of thought they were going to do a fourth season, didn't they?
So they ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So if you actually watch what exists in order, you get to the end and you go, what happens next? So it's sort of a bit frustrating that you don't know.
So if it was Sheldon, he'd be phoning up the TV company and going, what happens next? We've got to make another series to find out what happens.
I mean, there was, they were thinking about doing a fourth series and sort of half thinking about storylines, I guess.
And then the sort of heads of department changed.
So it didn't happen.
No. And it's a shame because I think a fourth series would have developed it further.
But what exists, I enjoy very much.
Yes.
I think the only story I've still not got round to seeing is Mama Doc.
Yes.
Because when we had our sort of original very bad tapes of Ace of Wands, I think that was the only one that was rare at the time. I don't know why. But now, of course, the whole
it's all out on DVD.
thing is on DVD, as we said, with a lovely booklet by
Pixley Special.
Andrew Pixley, of course, running to, what have we got, 88 pages worth of info in, again, quite small writing. But yeah, I mean, as I said, enjoyed it.
Yes.
Not the most spectacular of stories.
No.
But, not every story is.
No. Well, it's a standard episode.
Yeah. But it's good that you arrived and able to see episode 1.
Yes.
You didn't arrive halfway through the story, which would have been annoying.
No. Well, I didn't see episode 1 anyway because I spent a few weeks in the hospital, but
Right.
yeah, because I came a little bit early. More of which we will talk about in a minute.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Lisa.
Okay.
Then we'll jump ahead then when we come back, and we'll look
Yes.
at what, October,
Yes, October 1972.
when you
I
should have been.
When I should have been born. What was on?
Welcome back.
Yes.
And to wrap this issue up, we're going to look at October 1972, when
Yes,
you should have been.
When I should have been.
Just an addendum
born.
to the
Oh yes, took
Ace of
Moses
Wands
the
thing.
second. Not
Took Moses the second, not the third.
No.
But anyway, what series were about in October 72, and what episodes and stories were there then?
Okay. Well, Ace of Wands was still going.
Mm-hmm.
So because you've got from the 27th of September to the 11th of October, Mama Doc, as
All
you
right.
mentioned.
Yes.
Then you get the Beautiful People, I think it is. I've lost my... Where is it gone? I put it, it's right underneath it. Ignore that. Yeah, the Beautiful People, which is on from the 17th of October to the 30th of... Sorry, the 17th of November to the 30th of November. So there must be another story in between there.
Sisters
Deadly, of course. Sorry. I've written that down as well. I've just written it further down. Not very organised, honestly. So yeah, that's from
Sisters Deadly starts on the 18th
of October.
Yeah.
So that bridges the gap between the other show.
Yeah.
So yeah. You've also got the second series of New Scotland Yard, and we will get round to doing New Scotland Yard because we've talked a lot about it. And one of the episodes we want to do is on the 27th of October.
Now, which one's that?
Well, that's A Gathering of Dust.
Oh,
That's
that
where they
one,
get.
yes.
They found they're doing some building work on a building, like you do, and they found a skeleton.
Not a skeleton.
Not a skeleton. And why they go in to see it, John Woodvine and John Carlyle.
They get trapped.
They get trapped in there.
Yeah.
The wall comes down. So they spend about 10,
very
15
good
minutes
episode, that,
yes, of the episode trapped in a claustrophobic situation.
Yeah.
With John Woodvine's character taking it totally in his stride and being totally fine, and John Carlyle's character gets a bit sort of nervy and hysterical. But the actual first episode of the second series of New Scotland Yard is Nothing to Lose.
Nothing to live for.
Nothing to live for, sorry.
Yeah.
And that's Philip Maddock is in that.
That's Philip Maddock and the shotgun.
And
isn't it?
shotgun, yes.
Hold the shotgun by the barrel.
Yeah, he doesn't actually say that, but so yeah.
With Mark Jones.
With
as
Mark
well.
Jones, but anything with Philip Maddock in is always worth watching because he's always superb.
Okay.
So we also get there's a couple of things that debut that month. Debut. And one of them is Emmerdale Farm.
Oh right.
With a certain Mr. Fraser Hines.
Okay.
Which starts on the 16th of October. And that first episode is directed by Tristan Devere Cole.
Ah.
So, and you've got the original.
Because of course this is Emmerdale Farm.
Farm,
at that
yes,
point.
not Emmerdale.
Yeah.
It was Emmerdale Farm. It was in the afternoon. It's something like 2:30 in the afternoon, and it was So you get the first episode. You also get the first episode. I think that's on the same day because I haven't put a date down of Rainbow.
Oh, okay.
And that's got a certain Mr. John Leeson in it.
Oh,
as the scary Bungle the bear.
That's evil, scary Bungle, and Peter Hawkins as Zippy, isn't it? Yeah.
And what links that in quite nicely to Ace of Wands is that the former producer of Ace of Wands, Pamela Lonsdale, is now the producer of Rainbow.
Oh, that's true.
So that's what she left to do.
Yeah.
She moved on to it.
Because it's their sort of attempt to do sort of Sesame Street, isn't it?
It is, sort of.
Well, in the same way that Pipkins is as well, really. But
on a much smaller scale, obviously.
No budget.
No budget. So, and also one other notable thing for ITV, these are all ITV series, by the way, is that the second series of Upstairs Downstairs starts on the 21st of October. And of course, this series will see the demise of Lady Marjorie.
Oh, all right.
Later on in the series.
Yeah.
So it's notable for that. So if we move over to the BBC now, there's a lot of police series going on in October. In fact, you've got 3 of the more well-known police series all running at the same time. Because you've got Z-Cars, you've got Softly Softly Task Force, and you've got Dixon of Dock Green.
Oh, yes.
And they were all running
during the week, Yeah.
apart from Dixon of Dock Green.
Dixon Saturdays.
Dixon Saturdays, but Softly Softly and Z-Cars are on a Monday and a Tuesday. Well, Z-Cars is Monday and Tuesday, I think. And Softly Softly's on the Wednesday, I think. And Sykes as well.
Okay.
There's a series of Sykes on. But, there's some really good episodes of Z-Cars, though. I think we've seen all of these, because all of these actually exist, and they're out on DVD. None of the Dixons exist, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay, it's a little early for...
Yeah.
Because the Dixons are a little bit later than most of what survives, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, no, there are some from 72, just not these ones. So, but yeah, the Z-Cars are Takes All Sorts, which I think is the George A. Cooper one. Sins of the Father, which I remember nothing about. Damage, which is PJ one, so therefore blooming weird. And Public Relations, which has got Gareth Thomas in it.
Yeah.
The Softly Softlies, I don't think we've seen. They are Dog Eat Dog, Bank Rate, On the Third Day, and The Witness. Dixon of Dock Green are The Fingerman, Trial and Error, Gunpoint, and Written.
Okay.
And one of those is a Johnny Wheels episode, which is a shame it doesn't exist because they're always good value. And then for the Sykes, you've got Menace, Boat, Stranger, which we'll talk about in a second, and Football.
Okay.
Now, the reason we'll talk about Stranger is because of the guest star. And the guest star is a certain Mr. Peter Sellers.
I was going to say, this is, when it comes to episodes of Sykes being repeated,
yes,
it's the one that's always repeated, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. But I think this is the original showing for it. They just spend the whole episode not looking at each other in case they get the giggles, because Peter Sellers was a terrible giggler anyway.
I mean, the actual... because there are some sort of outtakes that survive of it, and they're as bad as me and Warren. They really are.
They just get the giggles and they can't look at each other. And I mean, they're meant to be professionals as well. We would never claim to be professionals, but you know, they're getting paid for it, and just giggling like a load of little girls. And Peter Sellers is the worst culprit. He really is.
Well, I know. I mean, there's the tales, of course, of making. The Inspector Clouseau movies.
Where nobody can really look at each other.
Where nobody can look at each other. And, you take all day to do one scene.
Yes.
You couldn't quite be as bad as that on Sykes, because you actually had to get it
you didn't have the time. But
it is one I know quite well, that episode.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's an interesting episode. Sykes is a bit odd.
Well,
sometimes.
It's purposely a bit strange, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, it's purposefully odd.
Yeah.
And this is one of the odder episodes because it ends up with Peter Sellers in drag.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he gets arrested by Corky, doesn't he?
Good old
for
Corky.
shoplifting or something.
Something like that. I can't remember.
But yes,
because Eric Sykes has to dress up as his own sister, doesn't
he? Does. Yeah.
It's all very silly.
It is very silly. Yeah.
But I mean.
But it's an interesting month.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. But it's just interesting that whereas now the BBC's schedule contains a lot of medical programmes and house hunting programmes and cookery programmes, in October 1972 it's absolutely jam-packed full of police programmes.
Police was in the air, wasn't it?
Yeah, police dramas. And each one of them is very good.
Yeah, but they're all very different as
well.
They
are very different because, I suppose Z-Cars and Softly Softly are fairly similar because they both sort of originate from the same sort of area.
Yeah.
But you got your Dixon of Dock Green, which people do, as we've said before, people think, oh yeah, Dixon of Dock Green, that's a bit sort of cosy and old-fashioned, and it's not cosy.
Did we say about Crown Court?
We didn't say about Crown Court, but that's because I didn't write it down.
Oh, right, I was going to say.
But there are some Crown Courts on during the day on ITV in October 1972. And I think one of those, if we're just looking it out, but I'm fairly sure one of those is one of the ones that have been released on DVD, which is Lieberman versus
Well, if
Savage.
it's 72, it's all the early stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of this is there.
So, which is an interesting one. And it's got Wolfie Morris in it.
So let's have a look. Let's have a look, of course, because there's so much Crown Court.
There is a lot of Crown Court, yes.
As we said, we've never quite made it,
No.
you know, beyond about the first year or two.
Well, no, that's because they haven't released beyond the first year or two.
Yeah, Doctor's Neglect is...
They didn't show that one, that's untransmitted.
Oh, is it?
It's untransmitted.
Oh, because it says the 11th of October there.
No.
But, all right,
I'm fairly sure that was untransmitted.
Okay.
Oh, the pilot was, anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on the episode.
Lieberman versus Savage, 18th of October, 72. That's right, yes.
So
all of those are available, aren't they?
But if you want a good overview of Crown Court, look for Ivan Kirby's blog about it.
Oh, that's right.
It's very good.
Yes, that's true.
It goes into great details about all the episodes, down to what was in the charts at the time.
He can give you far more detail than we can on Crown Court.
And there's some great pictures of the jurors.
Yeah, some weird looking jury.
Yeah, with the hats and moustaches and things.
Right, there we are. So that's October 72.
That's it, yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Lisa. Okay, and I think that'll just about wrap this issue up.
Okay.
So we sort of know what we're going to do in 21.
21, yes, we're doing more of the same, really.
Well, yes, this is quite a rich vein, actually,
it is.
of
That's
varied stuff.
Decided not to squeeze it all into one episode.
No, but we'll do the end credits now. We'll say goodbye and see you next time then.
We will.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You have been listening to episode 20 of Round the Archives, starring Lisa Parker, Andrew Trowbridge, Warren Cummings and Martin Holmes.
Thanks also to I.T. Williams.
On the musical side, you heard Dan Tate and Paul Chandler.
The script for Ace of Wands, The Power of Atep was by Victor Pemberton.
And the producer was John Russell.